Bilbo is a curious hobbit, not quite fitting in with the typical laissez-faire lifestyle of his kin. Throughout the adventures of the hobbit, he shows bravery, cunning, and compassion, proving that Gandalf's faith in hobbits is not in vain. Before we dive in, a quick note. Although there are a few mods used in this build, this is just the start. Once we have access to a level 12 character with mods installed, because some of them don't work on existing saves, there will be a lot more integration of new and exciting mods to make these character builds all the more flavorful. Onto the build. Starting with the basics, Bilbo is of course a halfling, and for the sub-race, it'll be a Lightfoot halfling, the stealthy and social of the halfling race. For starting class, we're going to go with what we've been going with for all of the hobbits so far, which is Bard. This has kind of become the default starter for any hobbit that we do. So at level 1 Bard, you have to choose 2 cantrips. We are going to go with Friends due to Bilbo's charismatic nature, and then Light, that can be used on the weapon to represent Sting. For the 4 spells, we are going to go with Charm, another nod to his charisma. Long Strider, hobbits always seem to surprise you with their fleet of foot. Heroism, just as hobbits surprise with their swiftness, they also often surprise with their bravery. And Dissonant Whispers, which is to represent the influence of the ring. The starting instrument will be the flute. I couldn't find anything about Bilbo playing a particular instrument, but since we know there were a lot of wind instruments at Bilbo's farewell party, we're going to go with the flute. Now, for the background, we are going to use our first mod here. This is the Trickster Hedonist background, and it comes from a mod called Vampire Infecta. So the Trickster Hedonist reads as follows. Looking at you, people see someone eloquent, experienced, and a little dangerous. There's a sensuality to you that people admire, and you've made use of that fact, oh yes. If ever there was an emblem for night and all its dark promise, surely that is you. Now, that last part doesn't really fit, but the first part does. I wouldn't go so far as to call Bilbo a hedonist, but he was considered strange by Hobbit standards, and he certainly could be a tricky fellow. However, the main reason for using this background is that the others' descriptions don't really fit well, and the skill proficiencies for this one make sense, giving you deception, stealth, and sleight of hand all together. For the ability points, we're going to keep strength as 8. Dex, we're going to bring all the way up with that +2 to 17. Con will bring up to 10. Intelligence will bring up to 10. Wisdom, we're going to bring up to 13. We will even that out later. And Charisma, with the +1, we will bring up to 16. So we will even out Dexterity and Wisdom later. We do want Dex and Charisma to be our highest scores to represent this surprisingly agile and witty hobbit. For skill proficiencies, we of course already have Sleight of Hand, Stealth, and Deception from the background. So for the other proficiencies, we'll go with Performance, since Bilbo is pretty good at commanding the stage, if you will. Nature, to represent Bilbo's garden, although we do know that Sam was the hired gardener. And we'll give him a little bump in Investigation as well. Alright, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to Appearance. Quick correction from Future Geeky Kitten. The skill proficiencies in addition to those from the background should have been Performance, Persuasion, and Nature. Back to the build. For appearance, we will be basing Bilbo on the way we see him in the Hobbit movies. So make sure you're on body type 2. Voice 1 is fine. For the head that I'm using, you will need a mod if you want to use the same one. It's called Jurinsky's Heads for Short Lads, and it is specifically the Reza head. I think this is the closest one I've found so far. Then skip on down to skin color, and we are going to go with Cool Tone 2, just lighten that up a little bit. Then over at eyes, we're going to keep this as brown 1. They're already the right color. Skip down to hair. We are going to go with Carry-On Feathers. You do not need a mod for this one. The color is going to be brown 2. So a lighter brown with a little bit of reddishness in it. And then to darken it up just a bit for the highlights, we're going to go with brown 3 and turn them up to 100%. That just darkens it up a bit. And since hobbits do not have facial hair, that's going to do it for appearance. So we will move on to the build. At level 2, we are going to be switching into Rogue. The Bard first level was just to represent him as a hobbit and give him a couple flavorful spells. That's about it. So for Rogue, first level in Rogue, we're just unlocking our sneak attacks. Level 2, we unlock all the cunning actions, hide, dash, and disengage. And then at Rogue level 3, it's time to choose a subclass. We are, of course, going to go with Thief because Bilbo is the burglar, so why wouldn't we go with Thief? Which unlocks the subclass features of Fast Hands and Second Story Work. And then at Rogue level 4, it's time to choose the first feat. So we're going to start evening out some of those scores here, and we are going to choose Athlete so that we can bump up the dex to 18 and get the benefits of when you are prone, standing up uses less movement, and jump distance increases by 50%, both of which will be helpful for this nimble build we're going for. And then at Rogue level 5, you unlock Uncanny Dodge. This also seems appropriate for the Bilbo build since he misses what could have been a lot of deadly hits. And at the next level of Rogue, the only thing that's happening here is a health increase, nothing else unless you want to change your skills. By the way, if you're enjoying the build so far, please consider subscribing. We're on our way to 1,000 subs. Back to the build. At Rogue level 7, you unlock Evasion. Again, just making him a lot harder to hit. And then at level 8 Rogue, it's time for that second feat. This time we are going to take Lucky. I think we could argue that all of the hobbits that go on adventures are quite lucky. At level 9 Rogue, you unlock Supreme Sneak, and this is a really great feature for Bilbo because it allows you to become invisible, which is very flavorful for him using the ring. Although there are items that you can get that will give you the invisibility spell. And then at level 10 Rogue, it is time to take our final feat, and that is going to be Resilient for Wisdom. That will bring up the score 1 so that it's evened out to 14. And also having proficiency in Wisdom saving throws is appropriate for this character, especially later on in his journey, as just like with Frodo, he shows some pretty impressive resilience to the influence of the ring. And keep in mind that Bilbo had this ring for somewhere around 60 years, and although it definitely had an influence on him, one could argue that the influence that the ring had on Bilbo over that 60 or so year span was nothing in comparison to what it had done to others within the span of maybe just a couple hours or a few days. And then at the final level, which is level 11 Rogue, you unlock Reliable Talent. With the build out of the way, it's time to go on to the bonus section. If you want to keep things simple, you can use the Shifting Corpus Ring found in Act 2 at the Last Light Inn, or the Fetish of Caladuran Smooth Hands found in Act 1 Grimforge to represent the One Ring, as they both grant the invisibility spell. If you're already in the trenches with mods or ready to start a brand new game with mods installed, as of a few days ago, the One Ring came to the official mod manager in BG3. It offers more than invisibility, but everything seems relatively on point. For your clothing, you can use the Potent Robe, found in Act 2, gifted by Alfira, to represent the Mithril Shirt gifted to Bilbo by Thorin, although you will only benefit from the second ability, as this build does not have damage-dealing cantrips. Or you can use the Studded Leather Armor +2, which can be found at vendors once the player is level 9 or above, to make Bilbo a little bit harder to hit. This is a light armor, so it won't negatively impact his dex and stealth. However, just as there was a mod option for the One Ring, there is also a mod for the Mithril Shirt. I will note, however, that I'm not sure if this armor negatively impacts dex and stealth, since it is classified as medium armor. For your weapon, you can use the Slicing Short Sword, found in Act 2 in Moonrise Towers, early on as a stand-in for Sting, which is relatively basic but has an advantage over typical short swords and daggers. Later on, you can switch to either the Ambusher, found in Act 3 in Rivington, which has a very appropriate first ability, but the second ability doesn't really fit in, or the Gleam Dance Dagger, also found in Act 3 in Rivington, which comes with its own built-in light, allowing you to swap out your light cantrip for something else. Did you think there wasn't a mod for this one? Well, there is now, and it could also help with other builds because it's the entire set of the Lord of the Rings Fellowship weapons including Sting. And that is it for the Bilbo build. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I bet you'd enjoy all the other builds we did for the Fellowship too.